Before we descend into the archives, a very necessary warning. The stories discussed tonight involve themes of stalking, violence, disappearance, supernatural threats, and psychological horror. While these are legends, the fear they invoke is real. This content is intended for mature audiences. Your discretion is strongly advised, and if you're watching alone, you might want to check your locks. Welcome to High Frights. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a room once the lights go out. It's not just an absence of noise per se, but it's a presence of anticipation. We're automatically hardwired to fear the dark. Evolution taught us that the cave entrance wasn't just a threshold, but a mouth waiting to close. Tonight, we're not looking at anything that's on the news, any facts, or anything that's found in history books. We're looking at stories that we whisper to one another to explain why we're afraid. Urban legends, folklore, creepypasta, modern myths, whatever you want to call them. They're the warnings we pass down from generation to generation. They're the cautionary tale that remind us never go into the woods, don't trust a stranger, and don't look in the mirror for too long. We have a long road ahead of us, and luckily the night is young and the archives are deep. So get comfortable, turn off the lights, and let's begin with the fears that start inside your very own home. We like to think that our homes are a fortress. We lock the deadbolt, we shut the blinds, and we assume that whatever's outside stays outside. But the most enduring legends are the ones that violate that sanctuary. Consider the story of a young girl, left alone for the first time by her parents. Very exciting for any preteens. Let's call her Alice. Alice was 15, old enough to stay home alone, yet young enough to still be wary of the creaks and groans of a settling house. Her parents were away for a weekend, leaving her only with the family dog, an old, heavy-breathing beagle, who slept under her bed. The first night was very uneventful. Pretty boring, just some homework, usual. But on the second night, a storm rolled in. The wind battered the siding, making the house feel fragile. Alice turned off the television and went upstairs to bed, the dog poddling faithfully behind her. She climbed under the covers, but she couldn't sleep. Every scratch of a branch against the window sounded like a fingernail. Every drip of the faucet sounded like footsteps. To comfort herself, she left her hand dangling over the edge of the bed. Yet, immediately, she felt a rough, warm tongue of her dog licking her hand. It was reassuring. The dog was at least there, and she felt safe. She drifted into a fitful sleep, only to be awoken by a sound, a dripping sound. She assumed she must have left the bathroom faucet on, and she checked the time on her phone. 3 in the morning, the witching hour. She sat up and the air in the room was freezing cold. She reached her hand down again. Lick, lick, lick. The dog was still there. Comforted. Comforted, she walked to the bathroom. The tap was off. The dripping wasn't coming from the sink, but it was coming from the shower. She pulled back the curtain, and hanging from the shower head, dripping blood into the drain, was her dog. Its throat has been slit. Alice screamed, scrambling backwards, her mind unable to process the horror. If her dog was dead, if her dog was hanging here, then what had been under her bed? What had been licking her hand? She ran back to her room and intended on grabbing her phone to dial 911. But as she entered the bedroom, she saw something written on her vanity mirror with the dog's blood. Humans can lick too. This is a story that's been told since the 1960s. It endures not because of the gore, but because of the intimacy. The monster wasn't hiding in a closet or outside the window, but it was right there, touching you, pretending to be the one thing that you truly loved. If the home is our sanctuary, then the road must be our purgatory. It's the space between here and there. And when we're in the car, we're in a suspended state of existence. We're moving, yet we're sitting still. We're encased in a glass and steel, watching the world blur by, protected from the elements, but entirely vulnerable to mechanical failure or human malice. This is a specific romance to the American highway at night. The the rhythmic thump of the tires on the pavement, the hypnotic flash of the dashing yellow line. But turn off the main interstate and find a gravel road, park the car, and turn off the engine. Suddenly, that steel cage doesn't feel like protection. It feels like a trap. It was a warm Friday night in November. The air was crisp, smelling of dry leaves and cool asphalt. A young couple, let's just call them Johnny and Sue for purpose of the plot, decided to pull off the main highway. They found a spot commonly known as Lover's Lane, a secluded overlook surrounded by dense pine woods, far from the prying eyes of parents and of the law. Johnny kills the engine. The silence of the woods rushes in to replace the hum of the motor. They turn on the radio low, letting the soft static and the top 40 hits fill the small cabin. For a while, the world outside doesn't exist. It's just the two of them. The fogging windows and the warmth of the, well, heater. Then, a news bulletin cuts through the music. Breaking news, the announcer says. His voice is urgent. A dangerous inmate has escaped from the state asylum just 5 miles from there. He's described to be armed and dangerous. He has a prosthetic steel hook in place of his right hand. Residents are urged to lock their doors and report any suspicious activity. Sue pulls away as she's now nervous. The woods felt private just a moment ago, but now they feel oppressive. Every shadow looks like a man. Every scratching branch sounds like a footstep. Johnny, take me home, she says. I'm scared. Johnny laughs it off. It's miles away, don't be a baby. But Sue insists. She locks her door and she stares out into the pitch black, convinced that she sees movement in the penitentiary. Reluctant, annoyed that the night's been ruined, Johnny slams the car into gear. He peels out of the overlook, tires spinning into the gravel, and speeds back towards the highway. They drive in silence. The tension is thick. When they finally pull into Sue's driveway, Johnny doesn't walk her to the door. He continues to sulk. Sue opens the door to step out, but as she does, she freezes. A scream tears from her throat, sharp and terrified, cutting through the suburban quiet. Johnny looks over, hanging from the door handle on Sue's side, still dripping with blood from where it had been ripped from the stump, is a steel hook. Why does the hookman persist? It's a story that's been told from the 1950s. On the surface, it's a warning against promiscuity. A moralistic finger wag telling teenagers not to park in dark places. But deeper down, it touches the fear of intimacy intersected by violence. The couple in the car was seeking privacy, seeking a moment of connection, and the hookman represents the installation of the outside world in its most violent form. It also plays on the fear of a narrow escape. Though both Johnny and Sue both survived, thankfully, it was only just. The hook is a physical token of how close they came to death. It reminds us that sometimes our survival is a matter of timing. If Johnny had waited only 10 seconds longer, the story would have ended very, very differently. But sometimes the danger on the road isn't trying to get in the car. Sometimes we invite it in ourselves. We figure on the side of the road, and our empathy overdrives our instinct. We slow down and unlock the door. It's October, a rainy Tuesday night, and you're driving along a winding coastal road. The windshield wipers are fighting a losing battle against the downpour. The rhythm is hypnotic. Your headlights cut through the gloom, illuminating the slick, black tarmac. Suddenly, the beams catch something white on the shoulder. You slow down. It's a girl. She looks young, maybe early 20s. She's wearing a thin white party dress, completely soaked, shivering violently against the guardrail. No coat, no umbrella, just a figure in absolute misery. You can't just leave her there, of course, so you pull over. You lean across and you pop open the passenger door. You need a ride? You ask. She nods, wordlessly, and climbs in. She's freezing. Her skin's pale, almost translucent. You turn up the heat and you offer her a jacket, a heavy wool coat from the back seat. She drapes it over her shoulders and gives you a small, sad smile. Where are you going? You ask. Home, she whispers. She gives you an address and is just a few miles up the road. You drive and you try to make small talk, but she's quiet. She just stares out the window at the passing trees. Eventually, you arrive at the address. A modest house with a porch light on. You tell her that you have arrived, but the words die in your throat. The passenger seat's empty. The door didn't open, the car didn't stop, she's just simply gone. Confused and terrified, you walk up to the house and knock on the door. An elderly woman answers and you explain what happened. You tell her about the girl in the white dress. The old woman doesn't look surprised, she just looks tired. That was my daughter, she says softly. She died in a car accident on that curve 10 years ago tonight. She tries to come home every year, but she never quite makes it. You apologize, your mind reeling, and you turn to leave. But then you remember your jacket. You gave her your jacket. The next day, you go to the local cemetery, and you find the daughter's grave. And there, folded neatly on top of the fresh sod, your wool jacket, though it's still damp. The Vanishing Hitchhiker is perhaps the most global of all urban legends. Variants exist in Korea, in Hawaii, and in the United Kingdom. But why? Because the story isn't about a monster, it's a story about grief. We fear that the hitchhiker we fear the hitchhiker not because she wants to hurt us, but because she represents a tragedy that can't really be resolved. She's stuck in an infinite loop, trying to complete a journey that she failed to finish in life. The horror here is existential. It's the fear that we too might leave unfinished business. That we might be so desperate to get home that even death can't stop us from trying. The hitchhiker is a passive ghost. She is a memory. But there are other things on the road. Things that are very much alive and very much hunting. There is a specific paranoia that comes when you look in your rearview mirror and see headlights that have been behind you just for a little way too long. A woman's driving home late at night from a late night shift at the hospital. It's now 2 in the morning, and the highway is mostly deserted. She notices a truck merging onto the road behind her. It's a large pickup, dark in color. It pulls close to her bumper, tailgating. She taps her brakes, trying to signal him to back off, though he doesn't. Suddenly, the truck the truck's cabin floor the truck's cabin floods with light. He flashes his high beams on, off, on, off. She's blinded for a second, adjusting her mirror to deflect the glare. Jerk, she mutters. She speeds up. The truck speeds up. She changes lanes. The truck changes lanes. Again. Flash, flash. The high beams flood her car with the bright white light. Now panic sets in. She takes the next exit, swerving at the last second. Yet the truck follows, tires squealing. He's right on her bumper now. Every few seconds, he hits the brights, illuminating the interior of her car like a spotlight. She's crying now. She fumbles her phone to dial 911, screaming that a maniac is chasing her. She pulls into her own driveway, and the screeching comes to a halt. She jumps out of her car and runs towards her front door, screaming for her husband. The truck driver slams on his brakes and also jumps out. He's holding a tire iron. Get inside, he screams at her. Get inside and call the police. The woman freezes on the porch. The truck driver isn't looking at her. He's looking at her car. He runs to the back passenger door of her car and yanks it open. He drags a man onto the driveway, a man dressed in black, clutching a butcher knife. The truck driver looks at the trembling woman. I saw him, he says, panting. I saw him rise up from your back seat just as you got on the highway. Every time he went to stab you, I flashed my high beams to scare him down. This legend completely flips the script. We're conditioned to fear the other, the stranger in the truck, the aggressive male driver. The story plays on our prejudice. We assume the threat is the person behind us. But the true horror of these high beams is the proximity of the threat. The danger wasn't behind the car, it was inside the car. It plays on the primal fear that we all have to get when we get into a dark vehicle. Did I check the back seat? It suggests that the person scaring us might actually be the only thing saving us. It forces us to question our judgment of friend and foe. Now, these stories are analog. They belong to an era of radio, of gas stations, of physical isolation. But as we move to the 21st century, our fears have migrated. We stopped looking into the dark woods and we started looking back into the mirrors of our screens. The road became the information superhighway, and monsters adapted. Folklore is living. It evolves. When we stopped gathering around campfires and started gathering around chat rooms and message boards, the legends didn't die, they just uploaded themselves. We have now entered the age of creepypasta. Horror stories copied and pasted across the internet until their origins were now lost, blurring the lines between fiction and reality. These monsters don't live in a specific town. They live in a collective consciousness of the web. Now, if you were on the internet in 2009, you definitely know this name. But strip away from the video games and the movies and look at the myth itself. It started with two photos posted on a forum, black and white images of children playing in a playground. In the background, barely visible among the trees, was a figure, abnormally tall, wearing a black suit, and where the face should have been, nothing. just smooth white flesh. The caption implied that the children in the photo vanished shortly after it was taken, and the legend grew. He then became known as Slender Man, an entity that stalks you not physically but psychologically. He begins as a shadow out of the corner of your eye, then static on your electronic device, coughing fits, then memory loss. He's often depicted with tendrils sprouting out of his back, blending in with the branches of dead trees. He doesn't run, he doesn't shout, he just stands there, watching. And the more you know about him, the closer he gets. Now, this is called the tulpa effect. The idea that by thinking about the monster, you summon it. Now, Slenderman is the great myth of the digital age, or the first great myth of the digital age, I should say. He's considered the modern piped piper or boogeyman, but his defined trait is his facelessness. In a digital world where everyone is obsessed with identity, with selfies, with recognition, the ultimate horror is an entity with no face, no identity, and no clear motive. He represents the unknown observer. We live in a world of surveillance. We are always being watched by cameras, by algorithms, by data trackers. Slenderman is the supernatural manifestation of that paranoia. The feeling that something tall and silent and standing just outside the frame of your life, recording you and wanting to take you away. Now, Slenderman apparently watches you from the woods, but there are things that watch you from much closer, things that wait until you're at your most vulnerable state. Sleep. In the summer of 2003, events in the northern United States began circling involving a strange humanoid creature. Information was suppressed. Diaries were destroyed, but one account survived. A woman wakes up in the middle of the night, her husband gripping her arm. "Don't move," he whispers. The woman looks at the foot of the bed. Standing there, facing away from them, is a creature. It looks like a man, but naked, hairless. Its skin is gray and wet. It's crouched like a dog. It turns his head. Two hollow, black eyes stare at them. Then it scuttles, not towards them, but towards the nursery, towards their daughter's room. The parents scream and run down the hall. They flip on the light and the creature is hunched over the girl's bed. It looks at the father, covered in blood, then it vanishes to the shadows. Though the daughter was an infant, her first words were right before she died was, "He is the rake." The rake taps into sleep paralysis. If you ever woken up unable to move, feeling a heavy weight on your chest, or seeing shadow figures in your room, you may have already met the rake. Science causes it a, Science calls it a hallucination caused by the brain waking up before the body. But folklore calls it a demon. The rake is terrifying because it invades the bedroom. It creates a scenario where the parents, the protectors, are helpless. It's the violation of the primal rule that I am safe in my bed. The rake is a creature of the dark, but sometimes the horror doesn't come from the location itself. The urge to explore, to go where we shouldn't, is a deep human trait, and sometimes the earth itself fights back. Now, this story appears on a series of blog posts in 2001. It's presented as a real diary of a speckler named Ted. Ted and his friends find a small hole in the earth. It's blowing air, which means there's a massive cave system behind it. But the hole is very tiny. It's the size of a dinner plate. They spend weeks chipping away at it, rock by rock. They're obsessed with getting inside. Finally, the hole's big enough for Ted to squeeze through. He describes the experience in agonizing detail. The rock presses against his chest, his helmet scraping the ceiling, and his arms pinned to his sides. He has to inhale fully to inch forward. He gets into the cave and he explores, but he starts hearing noises. A scraping sound, then a low rumble. In later entries, his tone changes. He starts hallucinating. He feels like he's being watched. He goes back into the hole one last time to retrieve his gear. Then he hears a scream. His own name coming from the darkness behind him. The final blog simply says that he's going back to the cave one last time to, and I quote, put an end to it. But the blog from then was never updated. Ted the Caver is a masterclass in claustrophobia. We fear this story because it's physically uncomfortable to listen to for anyone with claustrophobia. We can feel the weight of the mountain on our chest. It speaks to the danger of curiosity. The cave didn't want to be found, but Ted had to force his way in. It's a warning about respecting boundaries. There are places on Earth that are made not for us. Places where the darkness is absolute and we are merely intruders. Now we've covered the woods, the bedroom, and the underground. But this one more realms the digital age, which is also the realm of conspiracy. The idea that the technology itself is a weapon. And this, you might want to hide from your parents, because then your mom will now have to say, it's because of your damn phone. The, the year is 1981, Portland, Oregon. Rumors begin to circulate about a new arcade cabinet that's appeared just a few selective arcades. The marque simply reads Polyus. Polybius. Apologies. The game is addictive. Kids line up around the block to play it. It's a it's a stupendous abstract shooter filled with flashing strobes and subliminal geometric patterns. Apologies, I don't know what's going on today. Let me get some drink real quick. But the side effects of this game were severe. Players began to suffer from amnesia, night terrors, seizures. Some even take their own lives. Witnesses claimed that the machines were not collected by the vending company, but by men in black suits. These men would open up the back of the machine not to collect quarters, but to download data. And then, a month later, every Polybus machine just vanished. No trace was ever found. Polybus or Polybius, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, is the intersection of an urban legend and conspiracy theory. It reflects the Cold War paranoia of the 1980s, the fear of mind control, of government experiments on the youth. But in the modern context, it predicts our relationship with technology today. We are addicted to our screens, and we do suffer from anxiety and insomnia because of them in some cases. And there are men in suits that do collect our data. But Polybius isn't just a ghost story about a haunting arcade game. It's a prophecy about the addictive, destructive nature of of the digital world we built for ourselves. The screens glow, the data transfers, and we keep playing, even when it hurts sometimes. The path behind us may be long, but the path ahead is darker still. We've looked in the monsters that we drive past, the monsters we scroll past. Now we must turn our attention to the monsters that look like us, the strangers who smile, the neighbors who wave. And if you need a break now, and if you need a break, do it now. Walk around the room, check the locks again, because when we return, we're going to discuss the most terrifying creature of all, or at least in my opinion, the stranger.